Did you know some of your call center agents might be homeless? Today on the show, I'm joined by my dear friend, Dontrel Biggs. We get to reminisce about our time working together and talk about how faith impacts the way that we lead both ourselves, others that we're responsible for in the organization, and how that faith impacts the way we leverage technology for our remote teams. All this and more on today's episode of Cloud Sherpa. Dontrell, man, I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to have you join us today, man. How's it been?
Oh, it's been good. It's been good. I appreciate the invite. Staying busy, work, kiddos, but it has been good. Blessed.
It's the hustle, baby. It's the hustle. One reason I wanted to bring you on today was because I have had an exceptional perception of you. And it's a matter of you being consistent in your character despite what shift I was around you on. So I want to say thank you directly. I think I may have said that in person when we met at the night fight again, when you came out a couple of years ago for the promotional event that we did.
Yes,
Um,
yes,
which was off the chain. That was a very cool, different pace of event to go to. But
yes.
aside from just thanking you as an individual, I think you offer enough that I would want to share with even an audience so that they could get to know you too, man. Because and nobody, I don't think anybody grows up and says I want to work in a call center. And that's probably not someone's first job description or desire. However, despite that, there is such an opportunity to really make a difference in your life and in your family's life by working in a call center and being, most importantly, professional at your line of work. And so I kind of want to first start off with, like, how did you end up getting into this field yourself? Because I don't think you woke up one day and said, hey, I want to help manage or help lead within a call center either.
Believe it or not, my degree is in electrical engineering. I went to UCF, uh, got a bachelor's of science in electrical engineering, graduated there, spent several years in the field. Um, One thing led to another with a marriage that I was in, and the judge ended up giving me primary custody of my son. Um, he's currently 17 years old. He was 2 years old at the time. So I had to make a
Mm.
decision because with the engineering, I was traveling a lot, going on a state trip. So I literally, Joey, decided to that I needed something more flexible. So I jumped into sales. Actually, I started off by getting my mortgage broker license, then my life, health, and annuity license, and I was out there hustling, but it gave me that flexibility that I needed to take care of my little one.
Yeah.
But then I was passing by, I was downtown Orlando, and one of my buddies, he was like, "Hey, Dontrell, I'm working for, this company, making good money. It's phone sales. You should try it out." My first question to him, I said, "How much are the supervisors making?" Because I knew I had to go and I knew I had to become an agent to get to where I needed to be to get to that supervisor level. And he told me, and I'm like, okay, I'm in. And that's what led me to the company. And I've been there 12 years now.
That's a long time. That's a long time, especially when in the hiring market now, it seems like longevity isn't what you see on a lot of people's resume, you know?
It's
And I
true.
say this unashamedly as a millennial. I actually learned this when I cut my teeth in sales many, many years ago, a little over a decade and almost a decade and a half now, where I had a manager tell me, look, you are a young man trying to provide for your family. Who cares what somebody has to say about your longevity at a company? It's a matter of you interviewing the company too. However, there is something to be said about longevity at a company. It means that the company's doing well. It means that you believe that you're doing well at the company and either can continue to grow or are content with where how that the pace at which you're growing. So it's exceptional to hear that, first of all, what was important was prioritizing your family and being able to make an impact on the way you were raising your son.
Yes.
That I very much resonate with, man. I'm a dad of two daughters. And I remember at the time that I started going through a life crisis with, at the time, my marriage as well. I was making more money than I had made ever before. And I didn't care about the money. I cared about being a present dad. That's what I cared
Yes.
about. So
Yes.
the travel time away was not worth being a FaceTime dad. I ain't doing that.
Right. Right.
So I'm glad you made that commitment, brother. And it shows and it carries over to how you treat agents and other grown adults who are learning, which is different. Like adult learning is very different than when you're on the come up and through your age. So in the context of the way before we get to like the learning side of things and how you're impacting them, I want to kind of tap into some of the ways that your faith impacts the way that you interact with people. And is that something that you leverage specifically with just leadership, or is that something that you want to tap into when you're talking to, say, that agent who's fresh on Greenhorn, just getting involved in sales for the first time too?
Faith is huge, Joey. I'm going to tell a very quick story, and then it kind of ties into it. But one of my best friends now, right? We met a while ago. We used to be out partying, drinking, doing whatever, acting the fool. I was a Christian, right, at the time, falling off the ladder a little bit, and he didn't believe in God. During my partying phase and things like that, we used to have these all out conversations. I used to try to justify, that there is a God and that God exists, and he would refute it. And sometimes we would get into these all out battles, right? And
Yeah.
then what I decided to do, I changed my life as far as the partying and drinking went. So I went 3 years. I disappeared 3 years, got out of the scene. I had to cut people out of my life and everything, especially him at the time because that was like my party buddy, right? So I went back to his place 3 years later, knocked on his door. He gave me the biggest hug, and he was like, "Man, Don, I told you. I told my kids that you were coming back. I told them you would be back, even though it's years later. I told them." So we got to
Yeah.
hanging out. We would still go to shoot pool, right? I didn't do any of the parties or anything like that at that time because I was done with it. We would go have bowling, shoot pool, and he would drink, I wouldn't drink. And that went on, Joey, for I want to say a couple months. He said, Don, that's what he calls me. He said, Man, he said, I noticed you don't say anything about me drinking. You don't drink, but you don't say anything about me drinking. You haven't had a godly conversation with me, right? You haven't tried to beat me up for not believing in
Yeah.
God. And I was like, yeah, man. I said, I just made some changes. He said, whatever you have, I want.
Wow.
And I said, you sure? He said, yes. I said, well, what I have is Jesus. I changed my entire life. At that time, Joey, I was understanding the Bible more too, right? And
Mm,
understanding Jesus more and understanding that Jesus is love.
amen.
So if I'm showing people love, right? Not just talking it, but if I'm showing people love, it becomes infectious. Most people will curse you out and they will expect for you to curse them back out. But when you're that person that they curse you out and you wish good on them, now you become an anomaly. So I went on and I said, It's Jesus. I changed my life. I turned my life over to God. He said, When is the next time you're going to church? I said, This Sunday. And
Sunday. We
ironically
going
enough,
Sunday.
yes, ironically enough, Joey, that Sunday, my pastor was out of town. And whenever my pastor went out of town, he would have me deliver the message. So he came the Sunday that I was delivering the message. And at the end, we always give the invitation that if you want to give your life to God, here's an opportunity. He gave his life to God same day. About 2 years later, his daughter gave her life to God. And so, getting back to your question, right? The reason why I carry myself the way I carry myself is because people need love. They need love. And a lot of
Yeah.
times, love, like for example, for men equates to respect, right? And a lot of times
Yeah.
for women as well. So if I'm always respecting someone and I'm caring for them genuinely, they're gonna see that difference, and I'm spreading God's word without having to even mention anything about God's word because they're
I hear
seeing
you.
it through me,
Yeah,
right?
the approach is through your living, not necessarily through spit in chapter and verse, which it's the beautiful thing when you can recognize that there is practical application. And like, I know there's some people who might have an issue with open air preaching, and it's like, well, Christ himself was an open air preacher. So that's kind of a weird thing to be against if you are a Christian. But for because we're human beings, what better way, aside from open air and pointing to chapter and verse, than being the very thing that you believe, right? Which is a Christian, which by definition is a little Christ, someone who is a disciple, right? How do you think right now, or up until this point, have you leveraged that biblical worldview to impact the people on your staff?
You have to. Jack Welch, he was the CEO of General Electric, and he said, manage the people and let the people manage the process. And
That's good.
for me, that stood out, right? It's like, as long as you're focusing on the people, my focus, Joey, was always on how I can make this person better. And I had to make sure that they knew that I was vested in their interest. And sometimes it takes asking a few questions. I find out what motivates them. I find out what demotivates them. I find out key components that's going to help drive them. And once you like understand the person, once you don't make something about your paycheck, but make it about their paycheck,
Yeah.
right? Money, there's nothing wrong with money at all. It's the
Yeah.
love of money, right? But
Right. Come
there's
on,
nothing
bro.
wrong with money at all.
That's right.
And people need money to survive. People are taking away time from their family to go and make money so that they can take care of their family. So what I always instilled in the agents was the fact that, okay, what matters to you the most? And it's not money. It can be what you want to spend that money on, right? But it's
Right.
never
Right.
money. Money is an inanimate object, right?
That's right.
It's just a tool. Um, but then that's when you start peeling back the fact that they are taking care of their mom, right? They want to build a legacy for their children. They want to stop sleeping on a friend's couch and get their own apartment, right? The
Yeah.
sales contact center had me into communication with hundreds of people in various situations, but I always made it about them. And once you make it about them and make them feel important, now end of the day, you're just showing them that love that they need. You're showing them that attention that they need, and then everything can tie back to my faith, right? Just being a good person and being a good person for them and making things about them and then helping them in the long run as well. People need our guidance.
I think that actually you hit that exactly right in the context that at the end of the day, I know that was a very big reason why I was drawn to your leadership style. At the time, I actually had opportunity to work at the same company as you for some time. I left to move. I moved to a different county, so I changed, where I was at, and then it was actually through an offer to come back and jump into the training side of things because of what I had begun doing when I left. that I was like, yeah, I enjoyed working for the company, right? I could see myself there for a long time too. Frankly, had it not been for where I'm at today, I would be still there. The context was very much like how you described about, man, what does it take to get into that supervisor position? I'm thinking, okay, I know in order to get to where I want to go, I got to go through the trenches, right? It's just part of the chain of command. And being on the front line, there's something that was very motivating to me in knowing that someone is going to check on me today, dude. If I knew you were on the clock, dude, I knew you were going to check on me, even if I wasn't your direct report. It would be something that was just part of your, like, the culture you built had me that when I saw that when I saw you walk in, you would walk up and down the aisles and fist bump, right? You fist bump people, right? Or if I hadn't caught you that day quite yet, maybe I came in and we just got straight to it and you're sitting at the tower, right? When I roll up on you for the need, oh dude, what's up? How are you? And it's like there's a moment that yes, there's a customer on the line and we're going to be diligent. But dude, it's good to see you today. Even if it's so much as, man, how was the show with the kids most recently? Because you would know about what's happening in my personal life. And to think about how considerate that was at the scale of how many employees were around us. That can be overwhelming for people in itself. They can't even manage small teams. And so for you to remember names, specifics, like if there are kids involved or not, or if it is a couch I'm trying to stop surfing. I don't know how many times I've seen, paper plates show up on a new car outside because somebody who didn't want to work in a contact center started hitting it and was able to start really digging themselves out of
Yes.
not only the circumstances they were in, but start dreaming even bigger.
Yes.
So I very much attribute that not just to the training available or just to the spiffs that were available, but to the leadership. And this is the intrinsic stuff that it's a soft cost that people don't necessarily consider when they think I'm going to hire somebody. It's like, how are they on paper qualified, but also how are they going to impact my people and generate a culture where they desire to come to work, they're ready to get busy, and they're doing it with the heart to serve the end customer. But
Yes.
the first customer is your employee, right? With the way that things have changed, I mean, contact centers aren't, I mean, especially when the world went the way that it did, it's not like you're walking up and down the aisles and fist bumping everybody anymore, right? At least not to the capacity you were, at least at one point. So, how do you kind of maintain that same level of one-to-one ratio with your staff or with your teams from a distance or leveraging technology?
Definitely when the pandemic occurred, right? We had 2 weeks to get everyone out of the office and working from
Right,
home, literally.
right.
And that was like 200 plus agents just in our office area alone. Uh, Microsoft Teams was our savior.
Sure.
And so we definitely leveraged Teams. We leveraged Ring Central because that had a similar video feature as well. Connecting to people, asking them how they're feeling. Actually, it's funny, and I won't veer off too much, but I had an opportunity to attend a conference in Utah earlier this year, and it's this huge company that do surveys for thousands of other companies, right? And they have all of this survey data, results, all of this good stuff. So post pandemic, one thing that started transitioning, and that's why I like when you said that the customers actually the employees as well, right? There, some people call them team members. People started actually transitioning and wanting now to feel that they work for a company that actually cares about their well-being, right?
Hmm.
That actually cares about their career growth, that makes them feel like this sense of belonging. Now, companies started changing that trajectory and making sure that they were giving like a people first type culture, right? Making sure that their employees felt like they matter. Now you have this new generation who Generation Z who just started hitting the market, right? They didn't know anything but that.
Yeah,
So if
you're born into this, right?
yes, so it's like, man, this is how things should be. So if we're gonna, foster and make sure that we're taking care of the younger generation who we're gonna be depending on later, companies have to change. Um, my video, chatting, messaging on Teams, um, emojis, all of that stuff, just constant communication with people through electronics. That was the only way that we can do it, right? Eventually, people came back to the office, and still in the office, Teams is a platform that's used for communicating, for asking certain questions to leaders, for those who are working remote, because a lot of companies, including the one that I'm at, still has probably about 30% of the people who are working remote, but there still has to be that constant interaction with them. There still has to be the hellos, how's it going, coaching, right? I'm big on voice. There's nothing better than picking up the phone. At least got to tie in that voice into the picture, right? Picking up the
Yeah.
phone, calling them, or creating a video chat on Teams, anything like that, to just make sure that you see them, you have that voice, and they can hear you, because voice is just a frequency, right? It's a wave, and people can feel these sound waves that we're producing.
How are you leveraging those coaching sessions or those one-on-ones with your agents?
All coaching sessions are done either over the phone or video chat. Think it's important for people to understand exactly what coaching is, right? A lot of times, coaching carries like a negative connotation when it really isn't. Coaching is something that helps build and develop people. Um,
Right.
Coaching is something that not only helps build and develop people, but it also reinforces what people are doing good too. Whenever we have conversations, we would like maybe send a phone call, have them listen to the phone call so that they're prepared. Sometimes we would listen to the phone call with them over the phone, but it's always that voice interaction when it comes to the coaching, documenting the coaching afterwards, making sure that they're aware of the conversation, sending a recap, engaging them, and most importantly, like having them coach themselves, or at least feel as though they're coaching themselves. I'll break that down a little bit, because a lot of times we can listen to a call and say, hey, by the way, you forgot to do the discovery on the phone call. Or
Mhm.
you can say, hey, question for you. Um, how was your discovery on that phone call?
Mhm.
Right. Now we're getting them engaged. Now we're having them to think critically, right? And we know what they're going to say, but by it coming from them as opposed to us, now they're bought into it. We know the exact questions to ask to lead to where we want them to grow in that area. But a lot of times we just tell it to them versus asking them and leading them. And that's the difference between traditional coaching and empowering people. Because once people start speaking of their own problems, oh, well, you know what? I really didn't do any discovery on that phone call. Oh, okay. Or, do you have any discovery questions that you maybe use in the future or used in the past? Right? Do you have any discovery questions that you've used in the past? And
Mhm.
then get them to talking, get them to talking.
I know, especially in the framework of the kind of customer journey that we're familiar with, everything that you learn in discovery shows up in the close. Everything. And so your willingness to go deep, to be professional, to build rapport. I think that's the other thing, building rapport professionally, like asking questions that don't advance the sale or don't advance the conversation is a waste of everyone's time and doesn't help you overcome those objections that are valid sometimes in the later parts. One thing I thought of was how if I put myself in the position of the end user and customer, um, I could not be sold on the very things that sometimes I would think that I was trying to sell my customer on because I'm a single dad. So like the way that you're trying to appeal to me is not to get me to stop and do something. As a matter of fact, you have a higher likeliness of persuading me to do it for the sake of my family. That's a reason to do it. And why is this not a selfish decision if I make it today on the call by myself, as opposed to, well, let me think about it? Doesn't mean that you don't permit people to learn or to think about things, but what you need to think about should be informed with information. So, how good can I convey information that's most important to you so that as we start running into real objections, can I actually help you figure out if A, this is the right decision, and B, if it is and you're qualified, why it wouldn't be selfish to make it, right? These are very important
Yes.
things. So,
Yes.
I think you did a great job also talking about how, like, instead of just telling somebody what to do, and we have a tendency to do this in leadership, just crack the whip, so to speak, from the back office, is ask the question that invokes them to take responsibility of
Oh,
the process. If
mhm.
I can do this as a front end salesperson with an end user customer to say, Dontrel, how do you justify spending this kind of money on this type of product or service? And the customer will say something like, well, because my family needs it. It's been a long time. We deserve it. If they start saying it, they're selling themselves on why they're committed to the process. So,
Yes.
why do we not do this with our employees too, so that they can buy into the very culture that they were shocked by once they got
Yes.
hired? You know?
Yes. Yes.
So, so I'm with you,
And
man. I love that.
it's funny, Joey, because you mentioned the customer, the employees, and then even the family, right? I do it to my kids all the time, right? I
Yeah.
ask, right? Instead of being that parent that's like, no, all of them feel like little mini adults from my 4 year old all the way up to my 6 year old and my 17-year old, right? They feel like little mini adults because I'm not one of those people that's do this, do that. You know, I'm curious. What made you do this? What do you think?
Right.
What do you think about that? Right? And it's I love like sales concepts, especially. I mean, when you take your craft serious, it's like you start doing like independent research and you want to be the best and you want to be the best not just because you want that title but because you know by you being the best you can affect more people and now by you affecting more people you're changing more lives, right? So it's this whole chain reaction that's like, and that's why I admire what you do as far as building these packages for, like even if it's audio, video, whatever you're doing from a technological standpoint, Joey, you're doing something great, right? You're giving these people quality solutions, and by now them having this quality solution that's going to be one less reason why someone will, because you can have bad reception on the phone call and someone hangs up. Oh, this
Yep.
company is unprofessional,
Yep.
right? I'm not dealing with this. Where are you working from your basement?
Yeah.
Right? Nope.
Right.
Right? Hang up the phone. And now you're hanging up the phone on a potential vacation or whatever that could have saved your marriage,
Yeah.
that could have stopped the kid who may be contemplating suicide because they're not spending that quality time with their family, right?
Right.
And now that reception technology is so important because everything matters.
Yeah.
We got to come with our A game, especially within the first 30 seconds of a conversation. And that starts with effective technology, effective tools, right? So kudos to you for what you do, my brother.